you think you're isolated and alone, but really you're not. Those automatic negative thoughts that run rampant in our head. I call it my sweaty inner monologue. There's a quote by C.S. Lewis, and it's, "Friendship is born when one person says to another, 'What, you too? I thought I was the only one.'" I've had to work really hard to love myself through my sweating. There's nothing wrong with you. Like, yes, you're a sweaty person, but don't let your circumstances reduce you. You're more than your condition, and you can refuse to be reduced by your circumstances.
You're listening to the Sweaty Girl Society podcast, a show for women with hyperhidrosis, where we share tips for living better with excessive sweating. I'm your host, Karina. Now let's get into the show. Welcome to the very first episode of the Sweaty Girl Society podcast. In this episode, I think it's only fitting that we sit down with Maria, OG Hyperhidrosis Advocate and founder of My Life as a Puddle. Just a heads up that I did have some technical difficulties recording this, so you'll notice that my audio is off if you are watching on YouTube. Thanks for joining for the first episode. I think you're going to love this conversation. Hi, Maria. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So, Maria, you are approaching 15 years of hyperhidrosis advocacy in 2026. How does this feel?
Some days it feels like it's been a really long road. Other days it's still surreal that people know who I am and know what I talk about and follow me. That's just, I never thought that I would be an advocate, let alone an advocate who talks about excessive sweating. But it's been really fun. It's been a fun journey, and I've learned a lot along the way.
So I would love to do a retrospective and go back to your earliest memory of hyperhidrosis and sort of talk about your journey with hyperhidrosis. When did it all start for you, as far as you can remember?
My earliest memory of having a sweating problem is around age 7. I went to a private Catholic school for a few years, and we wore uniforms. And so I constantly remember wiping my sweaty hands on my skirt, ruining pages of cursive handwriting and just general schoolwork, not wanting to play games like Heads Up, 7 Up, or Red Rover because we had to hold hands or people had to touch your hands. But I never recognized it as a problem that only I was having. I just figured, oh, this is just normal for me. So I never really brought it up to my parents. And then when I was about 12 or 13, I finally asked my mom, like, what is wrong with me? Why are my hands and my feet so sweaty? Because my feet were another issue too. I couldn't wear the plastic jelly shoes that all the girls wore in elementary school. And if I did, I had to wear socks. And then I felt like a dork because I had socks on. So she finally took me to our pediatrician, and they never mentioned the word hyperhidrosis. They just said, here's a prescription, apply it to your hands and feet at night, and wrap your hands and feet in plastic wrap to help absorb the medication. That is not practical for anyone, let alone a 12-year-old. So I tried that for a little while. It made me itch, and it wasn't really that effective. And so I just kind of dealt with it. And then when I was in community college, I took a public speaking class, and we had to give an informative speech. And so I started researching hyperhidrosis, and that was when I came across the International Hyperhidrosis Society. So finally, there was a word for what I was suffering from, and an organization dedicated to helping people and practitioners treat it and manage it. So that was what initially started my deep dive into hyperhidrosis. And then when I was 30, I was a patient volunteer at a dermatology symposium. And while I was there, I received Botox injections in my hands. And that was the first time in my life that I didn't have to apologize for how my body was behaving. And so I walked out of the room that day feeling like, oh gosh, maybe I should tell my story. Maybe other people would want to know about it. And that was the beginning of my blog, My Life as a Puddle.
Interesting. So how did you get connected? Did you reach out to the International Hyperhidrosis Society?
Yeah, so I went to their website, read basically every page that I could, because I was finally validated, like, oh, this is what the problem is. And here's some ideas for how to help myself live a better life. And so I immediately signed up for their email list. And then they sent out an email that they were looking for patient volunteers in the Denver metro area. And so that was how I got connected in person with them.
I can really relate to so many of the stories that you told about your childhood playing Red Rover. I had a very similar experience where I didn't really understand why I couldn't hold hands with people, why my hands would slip so easily, but it was stressful from a young age, just hoping that the opposing child wouldn't run and try and break the link because I knew that my hand would break free. I feel like that's the case when I'm speaking with other people that have hyperhidrosis. We've all had a lot of really similar experiences. So you started your blog in what year?
So 2021. Or
Yes.
No, 2011, sorry.
2011, yes. I still remember coming across your blog. It must have been a year or two after you started, because
Wow.
I had my son around that time. And when I was home on mat leave, I remember coming across your blog and feeling so excited that somebody else out there was having these experiences. I consumed all the content that I could from your blog.
Awesome.
So thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And that's actually one of the pieces on my site that's missing right now is hyperhidrosis in pregnancy or hyperhidrosis in parenthood. I had a baby 4 years ago now, so I've been a little bit busy as a stay-at-home mom now taking care of my son, but I definitely have lots of ideas in the queue for blog posts. And I've heard from people, I'm afraid to have a baby because I don't want to pass this horrible condition on to them, or, how did you cope? And you find different ways to make yourself comfortable and do what you need to do in order to live a successful life. And I would say to anyone who's considering becoming a parent, don't let your hyperhidrosis get in the way of that, because you can still do hard things. It just might look a little bit different when you're doing them. And that's okay. When I had my son in the hospital breastfeeding him, I remember putting a washcloth underneath his head so that the washcloth would get wet for my hands and not his head. So like little things like that you figure out how to do along the way can really make a big difference.
Did you find that your sweating changed when you were pregnant?
Yes. So the first 6 or 7 months I was pregnant, I hardly sweat at all. I actually felt cold most of the time. And I was pregnant beginning in the fall, and then I gave birth in July of the following year. So most of the time it was cold. But then when I was 7.5 months pregnant, I went to my sister's wedding, and where she lived at the time, it's very hot and humid, and humidity is a terrible trigger for my sweating. So we were there for 4 or 5 days, and I just was like, oh, okay, now my body's like, oh, I remember what we need to do. And so I sweat all over my pretty dress that I wore for her wedding.
That's really interesting. I had the same experience where I had significantly reduced sweating during my pregnancy. I know that not everybody has that experience, because there's some people in our community that are struggling with sweating during their pregnancy, but I had the same experience where I had a reduction in sweating, but I struggled so much to breastfeed my son and to be able to hold him. I was the same, like towels, sweat streaming down from all places of my body. I had to work with a lactation consultant when he was about 5 weeks old, and that was stressful because she was trying to show me how to do things, and I was stressed as a new mom, and I'm sweating and I'm being flooded with emotion and can't focus on what she's saying. So pregnancy and having a baby, I think, is one of those times in our lives where hyperhidrosis can really affect things.
Absolutely.
So talk me through how you decided to start a blog and how you got that up and running.
Well, I have a degree in English, so I've always been a book nerd and a writer, and I love to write letters. So the next natural thing for me was to do it online. So I came out of that hyperhidrosis symposium that day feeling really empowered and validated, and like I didn't have to apologize anymore. And so I started thinking about it, and coincidentally or not, because, is it fate? Maybe it is. I had a friend who was taking some tech classes for how to build a website, how to build a blog. And so she offered to build mine for free. So I was like, okay, well, why not? Like, there's the door opening. So she built my website. We got that up and running, and I started writing and sharing. Initially, when I started my blog, I didn't use my first or my last name. I was more of an anonymous sweater. The longer I did it, the more comfortable I became. And so then I started posting photos of myself or of my sweaty feet or my sweaty hands or products that helped me, things like that. And then it just grew from there. I launched my social media pages at the same time so people could find me more than one way. Then I did a newsletter, and then I started pitching companies that had products that would help with excessive sweating. I did a couple of freelance articles, things like that. So I've just been growing ever since then. I don't have a ton of followers if you look on my pages, but I also think I have a lot of silent followers, people who are so ashamed of their sweaty bodies that they can't follow my page, like a post, comment on a post, because they live in fear of their sweaty secret being found out. So hello, if you are a silent follower. You don't have to be ashamed of your body. It does take a lot of deep inner work to get to that point, but I feel like everyone can do that.
Yeah, I think just the tip of the iceberg is what we see in terms of follower numbers. I feel the same way too, that there's probably a lot of people out there who are going to your Instagram page or going back to your blog, even though they're maybe not following. They don't want their friends and family to see that they're following a page. There's still so much shame and stigma and embarrassment wrapped up in it. And even myself, I am only slowly getting comfortable with putting my face out there too. So I totally understand that journey. It takes a while to overcome that.
Absolutely.
So do you remember what your first blog post was about that you published?
Oh gosh, it was probably something silly like, thanks for welcoming me to the internet. Like, be patient with me. I'm learning as I go, and I'm still a little bit on the shy side. So I'm going to be anonymous for a while. But then I started writing daily stories, like what it's like to go to job interviews. I remember early on in my blog, I got laid off from a job. And so then I had to go through going in for job interviews. And so that ended up being a series of posts about my getting ready routine, the clothes I wear, the things I do before I walk into the interview room, that kind of thing. So just daily life stories. And so chances are, if you've experienced something, I probably have a blog post about the same thing.
Do you have any favorites that stand out in your mind or ones that got more traction?
I have one that's about treatment options in general. It's a comprehensive blog post, so a lot of people start there. I have a series of posts from a girl named Jess who lives in Liverpool, England. Her mom, Haley, found my blog. And so Jess, she was 5 years old at the time. So she's helped me record some videos about what it's like to live with hyperhidrosis as a young child. So those have been really fun. And then some of my personal favorites are things that I've done that I didn't think I could do because I have hyperhidrosis. So as an example, I was an Oprah Magazine insider for 1 year. I was part of the inaugural group of people who were selected. They put out a call and they received over 1,000 applications, and I was one of just 50 people selected. And so as part of that experience, I went on a cruise to Alaska, which I paid for on my own, but I did get to be a model in a Chico's fashion show on stage. And so right then I was like, there's no way I can model clothes on stage in front of hundreds of people. Like, are you kidding? But then I stopped and was like, wait a minute, I can do this. It just might look different. And because it was an Alaskan cruise, it was cooler weather. So I do much better in cooler, drier weather. And I ended up not sweating, at least on my feet, because I had on a pair of really high heels
Wow.
from the fashion closet in New York City from Oprah Magazine. So that was really fun.
Oh, so fun.
But I was able to be in my body and not hate it while I was doing that, because I try to look at it this way now. If I'm nervous about talking about hyperhidrosis or nervous about showing up in my body, then that puts the focus on me. And I'm here to serve other people and help other people feel better about the sweaty skin that they're in. So I try and flip the script, because we all have those automatic negative thoughts that run rampant in our head. I call it my sweaty inner monologue, and it is a lot of the time not very nice. And so I've had to work really hard to love myself through my sweating, but still acknowledging those feelings. Like, yeah, I still have super crappy days and I hate my body and I feel like it's betraying me. But it's just a matter of changing your perspective and taking a step back and saying, okay, wait a minute. Let's put this in perspective and see what we can still do despite the things that we're struggling with.
I like that, because I think hyperhidrosis can really take us out of our body, whether it's trying to hide embarrassment, but also discomfort. I find hyperhidrosis is a steady source of discomfort for my body. I get swelling.
I do too.
You do as well. And I find that the swelling is almost as difficult to deal with as the sweating on some days. Being able to walk on my feet and move my hands, it takes you out of your body. In terms of your advocacy work, I'm interested in knowing how that has changed your relationship with hyperhidrosis or allowed you to connect with other people that have taught you things about hyperhidrosis.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me is the loss of shame and embarrassment. Like I said, when I was at that symposium, that was the first time I didn't have to apologize for how I was. People understood me. And so it validated me and gave me a sense of purpose. Like I said, maybe I have this for a reason and I'm supposed to help other people, you know? So every time I talk about it, it gets a little bit easier. If I'm able to give the disclaimer in situations that are appropriate, then I do so. Like job interviews, sometimes now that I'm so far along my advocacy journey, it's part of my resume. People will ask me, what is hyperhidrosis? What are you advocating about or for? And then I can explain it, and then I don't have to worry about it anymore because they know that I have it and I can't really control it.
Mm-hmm.
Medical appointments are another place where I think it's really important to speak up, because I think a lot of people with hyperhidrosis avoid getting medical care because they're so embarrassed, they're so ashamed. But your body is your temple and you have to take care of it. So jot down some notes that you want to tell them. Or if you're going to just a regular annual exam or a checkup or whatever, just tell them, hey, I have this medical condition. It's called hyperhidrosis. These are the areas where I might sweat. But you can ask for what you need to get through that appointment. If I'm going to like a gynecological exam, I will ask for what they call a chit. It's an extra thick absorbent pad, basically, that they use during surgeries or other procedures where fluids may leak. So sit on one of those on top of that paper that's on the exam table, and that will help absorb things. You can bring a towel with you or grab some paper towels in the exam room. So that's been a big lesson for me, is just don't be afraid to ask for what you need.
That's such a good tip. That's such a good tip. I find doctor's appointments so triggering as well,
Yes.
that the paper that they put on the
Oh, it's
examination beds, it's like,
horrible.
I'm going to soak through that in 30 seconds and
Yes.
it's going to be stuck to me. And this blue gown that you gave me, that's going to have sweat stains all over it.
I know.
Right.
It's
So
horrible.
yeah, that's such a good point. It feels so hard sometimes to ask for what we need because we're so accustomed to just trying to hide it and remain
Yeah.
silent. How do you find people react when you tell them that you have hyperhidrosis or when you ask for things?
Most people say, oh, I would not have noticed that had you not said anything, because we're so good at hiding it, right?
Mhm.
Or I'll explain what it is, and they're like, oh, I have that too, or oh, I know someone who has that. You think you're isolated and alone, but really you're not. You know, there's
Mhm.
365 million people in the world who have hyperhidrosis.
So one thing that you've spoken about openly is being a cancer survivor.
Yeah.
Can you talk about how hyperhidrosis impacted that journey for you? Because I can't imagine that was easy on its own, and then having hyperhidrosis layered on top of that.
Right. So when my son was 10 months old, no, maybe a little bit earlier than that, I had found a new primary care doctor, and he ran every lab that he could run. And a couple of numbers came back that he didn't like, thyroid numbers. So he sent me to a surgeon, and they did a fine needle biopsy. And lo and behold, I'm diagnosed with thyroid cancer, which I never saw coming. I had zero symptoms other than the fact that I knew that I had Hashimoto's, which is an autoimmune thyroid disease. Typically, when you have one autoimmune condition, you tend to be diagnosed with more. And so I'd already been diagnosed with ulcerative colitis, which is an inflammatory bowel disease. So I had been already dealing with that, then got the thyroid cancer diagnosis. So in order to complete treatment, I had 2 separate partial thyroidectomies, followed up by radioactive iodine. And during the first surgery, they put you in a gown, which thankfully was not a paper gown. It was a cloth gown. So I was
Mhm.
a little bit happier about the sweating part of that. But then they also said you need to be naked under the gown. And I'm thinking, well, why do I have to take my underwear off if you're cutting into my neck? Like, that doesn't make sense.
Mhm.
So I was triggered to sweat in that case. And then post surgery, the thyroid is the master gland of your body, and it controls your metabolism and a bunch of other things. And so now I don't have my body's internal thermostat. So now it's very hard for me to decide, am I sweating because I have hyperhidrosis? Am I sweating because I don't have a thyroid? I don't know. It's kind of hit or miss. I've become very aware of what I put into and on my body. So people might think I've gone down the crunchy side, which is
Mhm.
fine.
Mhm.
I think Eastern and Western medicine are both equally valid. There's a time and a place for both, but I've definitely become more on the natural or holistic or integrated side of things. So some of the treatment options for hyperhidrosis, I don't feel like are the best fit for me anymore. But
Mhm.
just because they aren't right for me doesn't mean I'm not going to speak about all of the treatments on my blog, because I want people to have the best information and the most options for their excessive sweating.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I
Right.
think that a lot of the time we do need to do an assessment for ourselves. Are we willing to take some of the risks that might be associated
Mm,
with treatments?
right. And I would say definitely do your own research, and what pops up on the first page of an internet search may be a paid ad for a product or a service. So just make sure you have informed consent about all of the side effects with a medication or a procedure before you go down that route.
Yeah, yeah. So, going back to your advocacy work, what are some of the best moments you've experienced?
Back in 2017, I was a featured panelist speaker at the inaugural patient focused drug development meeting on hyperhidrosis. They call it a PFDD. So I got to share my sweaty story with members of the FDA and Big Pharma, and there were other patients there. And so ahead of the meeting, all of the patients got together and did some activities. So meeting more people who have hyperhidrosis. Someone there recognized me. She followed my blog. And so now we exchange Christmas cards every year. So having
Oh,
that tangible,
yeah,
lasting relationship with a lot of
yeah.
has been so neat.
Isn't it so
Yeah,
nice to meet other people with hyperhidrosis?
it is. There's a quote
Yeah.
by C.S. Lewis, and it's something to the effect of, friendship is born at that moment when one person says to another, "What, you too? I thought I was the only one."
Oh, I
And
love
that's kind
that.
of what's happening is, my one drop of sweat is kind of creating like a ripple effect. And it's something that I'm really honored to be a part of. And I don't take it lightly at all. And I hope to always stay humble about it. Um,
Mhm, mhm.
yeah. So being a panelist speaker at the PFDD was really cool. I have guest posts on my blog from around the world: Kenya, the UK, the Philippines, France. A lot of people in the US have submitted their stories, and I'm still accepting guest blog posts if anyone wants to reach out. I'd love to feature you too,
Oh, yeah.
because I love what you're doing. I think
Oh,
it's
that'd be
so
awesome.
cool. Yeah. So being able to create a network of people who have the same thing, and we can bounce ideas off of each other, we can vent to each other, and have a sense of friendship and community, I think is really important so that we don't feel alone.
Mhm.
And then my most recent advocacy, um, every year Johnson and Johnson puts on a patient advocacy conference called Healthy Voices, and I've applied to attend every year for probably the last 10 years. And this year I got in. So in
Yay.
November, I will be going to the Healthy Voices conference. And it's more internal focused to help advocates become better at what they're doing. So I won't necessarily be talking specifically about hyperhidrosis while I'm there, but I will be coming home with more tools in my toolbox so that I can get my message out and help more people.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Congratulations on getting
Thank you.
getting into that. Yeah, I know it's been a goal of yours for a while, and
Yeah.
that's really exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, on the flip side, I'm curious if you've had any not so great moments or challenges with doing advocacy work around hyperhidrosis. And I'm specifically thinking around, s- I feel like sometimes there's some pushback because for folks who don't experience hyperhidrosis, there's that idea that, like, why are you complaining? It's just sweat. This is not going to kill you. It's not a disease. I mean, you could argue that because the rates of suicide are higher, depression, anxiety for people with hyperhidrosis, but
Mm-hmm.
it's not going to directly threaten your life. Anything that you've encountered like that?
I haven't really gotten a lot of negative feedback, but to people who say, "Oh, it's just sweat, like, why are you even complaining?" I would say to them, all pain is the same. And so whether or not our hyperhidrosis brings us physical pain, because we might have swelling, like you mentioned, or we might get skin rashes or things that could be painful, the emotional and psychological pain can be bad. And that's not to say, oh, just, be a victim and, I would say don't victimize yourself. Feel your feelings and get them up and out, but don't focus on them, because otherwise it's going to keep you stuck. And then as far as like other pushback, I've tried to work with a few different companies, and they've tried to pigeonhole me into, well, you're either an influencer or you're a patient. And I really don't like the word influencer. I'm an advocate. I'm not an influencer. Do I have influence? Maybe, but I'm advocating. I'm not trying to get the most views on
Hmm.
Instagram and, Facebook. Like, I don't care about views and likes. Sure, it helps me spread my message, but that's not why I do it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I'm both a patient and I'm also an advocate. So for them trying to pigeonhole me into one way or the other, that was frustrating.
In terms of your advocacy work over the 15 years, what has changed? How has the conversation changed, if it has at all, since when you started?
I think that's a hard question. The conversation has grown, but I don't know if it's quite changed yet. There's definitely more people who are speaking publicly about their condition, organizations like what you're creating with Sweaty Girl Society and things like that. So I think that is awesome. Treatment wise, I feel like we're still kind of stuck in the axillary treatment realm. So those people who suffer from sweaty underarms, that's what most of the medications are targeted toward, or the procedures. So I would really love to see more treatments for palmar and plantar and craniofacial, particularly.
Yeah.
Craniofacial hyperhidrosis, I think, is probably the worst in terms of being able to hide it, because how are you supposed to hide a sweaty head and a sweaty face? That's difficult, and people might think, are you okay? Are you sick? Is something wrong? Why are you drenched in sweat? When really that's your normal and that's what's happening in your body. It doesn't mean you're sick. It doesn't mean you're overweight, or, things like that. Oh, you must be sweating because you're fat. Like, no, that's not the case. So I think keeping the conversation open and creating that larger sense of community will really help in the long run.
Yeah. Yeah. In terms of research, where do you think research is needed next?
I would like to know what the root cause of hyperhidrosis is. There's some research that says it could be caused by an overactive sympathetic nervous system, so your body's fight or flight response. I'm not a medical professional by any means, but I would really like to see more research into the root cause of that, and looking into how can we tap into the parasympathetic nervous system, your body's rest and digest. And are there things that we can be doing with the vagus nerve to help our bodies calm down and things like that to reduce sweating?
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah. It is frustrating that we still don't understand what causes this. Even when you were talking earlier about being a parent and worrying about passing it on to your child, that is so unknown as well, because sometimes you will pass it on, sometimes you won't. Sometimes your child can develop sweating in a different area or to a different degree. There's just a lot that's unknown about that as well.
Yeah, so I think there's definitely a genetic component to it. I have members on both sides of my family who have hyperhidrosis.
Oh, wow.
My maternal grandmother's brothers had it. They were in the army, and they would come home with trench foot because their feet were so sweaty inside their combat boots.
Oh, interesting.
And then my dad also has hyperhidrosis, and he can get full body sweating. Yeah, so yeah, it's definitely on both sides of my family. I also developed compensatory sweating, or what they call CS, as a side effect of getting Botox injections. So it stopped the sweating in my hands for about 3 weeks, best 3 weeks of my life. But I developed compensatory sweating in my lower back, and I still have that to this day.
Wow.
And Botox can be effective, but I've heard that have to get more than one treatment to lengthen out the effects. And it can be very painful depending on the area of your body where you're doing it. So looking back, I can't believe I did it. I had 155 injections in the palms of my hands. And that was at that
Whoa.
Yeah, but I feel like
155.
155. They took a Sharpie and put dots all over my hands. So that was wild, but desperate times call for desperate measures. And I felt like I was at my wit's end, and I said, I've got to at least try this. And that was what catapulted me into my blog. So I don't regret it by any means.
Yeah. Wow. That's a lot. I had Botox done a few times. My underarms, that was tolerable and worked quite well for me. But I also had it done on my hands once, and it was, for me as well, extremely painful. Now, I think I only had 30 injections on each hand, which I felt was like a lot, but that's wild. After I had it done, my hands were bruised and bleeding, and it was not pleasant. Now, I do know people who don't have that same experience. Again, everybody is different, but I personally could not tolerate that and didn't want to keep up with the underarm injections every 6 months type thing. So yeah. Wow. So your compensatory sweating didn't end when the Botox ended, unfortunately.
No, unfortunately. I just kind of deal with it.
What a mystery. What a mystery
It
this
is.
medical condition is.
Yeah.
Yeah, some answers would be great.
Yes.
Yeah, and
Get
the
on
thing
that,
is
people.
yeah, and the thing is that it's not like it's an extremely rare condition, right? There's millions of people worldwide
Mhm.
with this. Do you think that it's just because it's not talked about, that the attention hasn't been put there?
That, and also there probably isn't as much money in finding treatments for it or finding a cure. We can
Mhm.
always hope for a cure, but I don't think we should place our happiness or our success in life on whether there's a cure. You have
Yes.
going forward and just live your life to the best that you can and ask for what you need along the way.
Yeah. Yeah. When I think about treatments and products, I like to think of it as a toolkit we carry with us. And
Yeah,
sometimes an antiperspirant is going to be what we like. Sometimes it's going to be iontophoresis. Sometimes it might be Botox. And sometimes it might be medication. And at different times of your life, different things might make sense. And then
right.
there's also a place, I think, just for nothing,
Hmm.
for just sort of living life as a sweaty person. Is that sort of where you're at right now? Do you find freedom in that?
I do find freedom in that, and that's basically where I'm at now. For myself, I will never get ETS surgery. I feel like the side effects outweigh the benefits.
Yeah.
I've met people in person who have had that surgery and they have severe compensatory sweating from their neck to their hips, like full body,
Yeah.
full trunk area sweating. They're sweating through multiple layers of shirts, and their quality of life is even worse than before they had the surgery. And everyone's body is different. Some people have had that surgery and they're great, they're fine. But for me, I will never have that surgery. Like I said, too, I'm careful now about what I put in and on my body.
I wish there were more better
Yes.
solutions and better
Mhm.
understanding of
Yeah.
root cause issues.
Right.
Yeah. So what is next for you personally? You mentioned that you're going to the conference where you'll be developing your advocacy skills. What do you hope to do in the coming years? I know that you're a stay-at-home mom and you're very busy with that, but what does
Yeah.
your advocacy work look like?
Well, I'd like to get back to blogging on a more regular schedule. My son will be in preschool this year, so I'll have more time to devote to blogging. I have so many notes on my phone about different topics that I've thought of or that people have asked me about that I really want to write about. Hyperhidrosis in pregnancy and being a parent being probably the top two right now.
Yeah.
Um, and I also have some more creative hyperhidrosis work that has been on my bucket list for years. I don't want to say too much about it because I want to just keep it close to my heart right now while I'm
Okay.
working on it.
Yeah.
But hopefully there will be some news about that in, the next year or so. Who knows?
Oh, exciting, exciting. Well, Maria, thank you so much for your time today and your conversation.
Yeah.
Um, it's always nice to chat with somebody who has hyperhidrosis, and then you who has been very influential in my life for so many years. I was one of your silent followers for many years. So thank you so much. So I wanted to end by asking you, where can people find you online?
Yeah, so my blog is mylifeasapuddle.com. You can find me on Facebook and X at mylifeasapuddle. And I just want everyone who's out there sweating in silence. There's nothing wrong with you. Like, yes, you're a sweaty person, but don't let your circumstances reduce you. You're more than your condition, and you can refuse to be reduced by your circumstances.
I love that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Sweaty Girl Society podcast. If you liked today's episode, join our free membership community at sweatygirlsociety.com/community.